As we near the completion of what has become known as the American century, one of the most remarkable stories of our nation has been the sea change in the roles of American women. At the turn of the 20th century, the vast majority of women worked at home. Today, nearly half of the country's females are an integral part of the workforce. A shift of this magnitude is unprecedented in history, but it did not happen easily or overnight.
Not the church, not the state. Women will decide our fate.
I'm just going to go by and I'm going to ask everyone, what does feminism mean to you, and why do you or don't you identify as a feminist?
I wouldn't identify as a modern feminist because I don't really feel any affinity for third wave feminism any way, shape, or form, but I support social and legal equality for men and women. And so I think that I think the term feminism has been co-opted by the left in some pernicious ways. So I'd like to identify as a feminist, but I'm not sure in the current vernacular that's really possible.
I actually struggle with identifying as a feminist for a lot of different reasons. And when I think about my intersecting identities as it pertains to being Black, as it pertains to being also trans, as it pertains to this movement, I struggle with saying, oh, I'm a feminist, but also support women's rights at the same time. So
feminism has evolved into a left-leaning political mindset where women are pitted against men and used as weapons to win elections, which is actually going to your Hillary point. Why do you feel this way specifically?
Well, look, I believe that a feminist is any woman who lives the life she chooses.
Check it out, check it out. What you want, girl, great position.
The feminism movement has been one of the most significant ongoing battles in American history and worldwide. And even though women now make up over half of the workforce, the feminist push is far from over. This is why you can be branded a woman hater if you're not careful with how you share an opposing view. This also explains why preachers who speak on the topic twist verses to avoid offending what has become widely accepted in society.
It is absolutely critical that there is equality of being. The Bible says in Galatians 3:28 that men and women are equal with God. So important is this equality that God tells a husband in 1 Peter 3:7, if you don't recognize, respect, and appreciate her equality, I will not answer your prayers.
With the first ever woman vice president and the ongoing number of female leaders in influential roles, civilization has taken a noticeable shift in a completely different direction. And interestingly enough, with these significant changes throughout churches, corporations, governments, and even in homes, more than ever, there has been a massive difference in the portrayal of male leadership. Today, an authoritative, confident, assertive man who is also a loving, protective, and non-abusive husband and father is now viewed as toxic. But where did the origin of women equality come from? And how are the once glorified protectors of society now the image of poison? The answer is found in the Garden of Eden. Remember when the serpent spoke to Eve, not Adam, and questioned her about what Yahuwah commanded? Well, Adam was right there. So why didn't the deceiver speak to the man and not the woman, especially since Adam named him and he knew that Eve was created after all other creatures? Because the serpent knew precisely how to lead them with deception towards disobedience. While it seems as if all the serpent wanted was for humanity to fall, the truth is that it's much deeper than what is commonly taught. The rebellion in the garden tends to get most of the attention since we're all living out the worst decision of our greatest ancestors. But this wasn't the first time Yahuwah's creation failed. Isaiah chapter 14 verse 12. How have you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. Before humanity was created, the serpent, the devil, or Lucifer, was once Yahuwah's first created beings, and he saw something that he wanted that didn't belong to him. It was to sit as the Almighty, and through his naturally created cunning ability, he deceived a third of the angels to join him in his failed revolt, and all were cast to the earth. Just as the serpent knew precisely what to tell the angels to get them to leave their post and rebel, he fully understood who to speak to in the garden and what to say. When Yahuwah created the woman, like the fallen angels, she knew her purpose. It was to be the helpmate of the man. In essence, what Adam was made to do and not do, Eve was there to support him, as she told the serpent exactly what Yahuwah commanded the man not to do. So to lead Adam towards failing to obey, the serpent saw Eve's help. This is no different than when he pursued the throne of Yahuwah. He knew he couldn't do it alone and consulted essential team members for aid. And just like when the angels listened to the serpent and lost their place in heaven, Adam obeyed the words of Eve that came from the snake, and they were both kicked out of the garden. And his ultimate goal today, which he failed to achieve before his fall, is to establish a kingdom on earth greater than Yahuwah's in heaven. This is why the prophet Isaiah goes on to say, "For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Elohim. I will also sit on the mount of congregation, on the farthest side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." This explains why we see more and more men being uprooted or surrendering their rightful place in society for that of a woman, and the children who suffer as a result. After eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the Adon Yahuwah said, "Behold, the man has become like one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put his hand and also take of the tree of life and eat and live forever." Therefore, the Adon Yahuwah sent him out of the garden to till the ground for which he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. After being expelled from the garden, Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. Abel was the keeper of the sheep, but Cain was the tiller of the ground. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruits of the ground to the Adon. Abel also brought the firstborn of his flock and their fat. And the Adon respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain became very angry, and his countenance fell. And the Adon said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at your door, and its desires is for you, but you shall rule over it." Now Cain talked to Abel, his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. Then the Adon said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" And he said, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And he said, "What have you done? For the voice of your brother's blood cry out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth." And Cain said to the Adon, "The punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. And it shall happen that anyone who finds me will kill me." Then the Adon said, "Therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And the Adon set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. What led to the events between Cain and Abel shows us precisely what happens when the divine order of humanity is not followed. The woman agreed to be deceived, the man obeyed the lie, and the children, who became the makeup of society, produced the failures of the parents. Adam was present when Eve was deceived, and instead of holding on to our Father's commandment, he listened to the lie his wife received, which led to humanity's first domestic violence case and murder. The reality is that the feminist movement isn't new. It's only gaining tremendous momentum because the season we are living in and the finalization of Satan's kingdom. This is why the aftermath created in the first home has drastically become the norm for many families today. 1 in 4 children live without a biological, step, or adoptive father in a home. As a result, these children make up 85% of youths in prison, 71% of high school dropouts, 90% of all homeless and runaway, 60% of youth suicides, 85% of behavioral disorders. And it is not a coincidence that boys lead all the above categories and account for 80% of violent crime arrests. Adam was a male, created before Eve and tasked with tending to the garden and the animals. Eve was the backup. It's one thing to remove the support, but if the lead goes down, everything else becomes devastating. Have women for decades succeeded in positions of authority in and outside of the church? Absolutely. Have women done a great job as single parents working hard to maintain the home? Certainly. But despite popular theories and a mother's good intentions and successes, it is essential for the innate ability of a loving, guiding, and confident man of Elohim to be present in the lives of children. And many single mothers know this as they consistently seek support for their sons through mentoring groups, sporting activities, and ministry groups in hopes of being led by a firm man. But because of strong delusions and incorrect teachings, many also believe a woman leader, especially in churches, is an anointed role of the Almighty by design. Yet, according to the events in the garden and throughout history, women in charge don't point to a positive progress in society, but a time of severe judgment. 2 perfect biblical examples make this truth very clear. The first is Deborah, a prophetess and the only woman who had the role of a judge over the chosen of Yahuwah. Her calling was ultimately to lead the people back to righteousness and victory against their enemies. Though she was called to judge Yasharel, her appointment was not a good sign for his people. Her authority came because the people continued to do evil in the sight of the Adon. Because of their continued commitment to sin, Yahuwah not only released his judgment through Deborah, but sold them into slavery. Even though she was obedient to speak to the people as Yahuwah revealed and was successful in judging, a woman overseer meant that Yasharel was living in condemnation. This is why Yahuwah even told Isaiah to declare, "As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Oh, my people, those who lead you cause you to err and destroy the way of your paths." Historically, the hearts and ways of Yahuwah's people diverted from him and towards paganism. They continued to find themselves doing abominable things. Consequently, this is why Jezebel, the queen of King Ahab, was allowed to massacre most of the prophets of Yahuwah and led nearly his entire people to bow down to Baal. While she was not called to lead Yasharel, she was given free rein through her leader Ahab and the people's disobedience to Elohim's commandment. Judge Deborah's actions prove that it is no question that women can create effective change as leaders. However, it is vital to realize the difference between the time of Yasharel's rebellion and the present-day capacity of women under the new covenant, Yahushua HaMashiach. When Yahuwah called the prophetess judge, it was before the ministry of the Messiah. This was the time that the people were under the law. Her objective was to guide lawless people to repentance, victory in battle, and restore their land. Today, under grace, Yahuwah has given his spirit to all people, men and women. This is why Joel prophesied and echoed by the apostle Peter, "And it shall come to pass afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions." The purpose Yahuwah empowers women today is not the same as during the time before the resurrection of the Messiah. In this age, Elohim's ultimate aim for women is to restore and maintain the divine order of male headship as he originally created back in the garden, and more notably, so that the people and families of Yahuwah are clearly distinguished from the children of Satan and are not deceived by them. This is why the Apostle Paul instructed the churches in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 12, "Let a woman learn in silence with all submission. And I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over man, but to be in silence. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into transgression. Nevertheless, she will be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with self-control." It was never intended for Eve to respond to the serpent. She was created second and as a helpmate. Adam should have stepped up and addressed the problem. But as pointed out in part 1 of this series, this is why remaining in the presence of Yahuwah and being obedient to his unaltered truths is vital for the head and those he leads. Titus chapter 2 verse 1 through 5. "But as for you, speak the things which are proper for sound doctrine, that the older men be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith, in love, and patience. The older women likewise, that they may be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teaching of good things, that they may admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their husbands, that the word of Elohim may not be blasphemed. To avoid deception, disorder, and cursing the word of Yahuwah, he has established an order for his people. Today, unlike the time of Deborah, Yahuwah is not leading or allowing women to restore his people, their land, or others. He has sentenced this world, the ungodly, and those who practice sin to the coming outpour of his wrath on earth and everlasting punishment. And to help ensure we who believe in him are not walking the broad road towards destruction, we are made aware of how devastating the sins of the garden were, and how the same acts today have created a kingdom that will mirror the one who first acted in pride. Now I know there's some of you who will quote Galatians chapter 3 verse 28. "There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is neither male nor female, for all are one in Yahushua HaMashiach," as a way to support women in any role among the saints. But when you take a moment to examine the previous verses and apply them in context, you will see that Paul was addressing the purpose of the law and the everlasting covenant made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he declares that through Yahushua, all now have a chance to become heirs of the promise. This is why the previous verses say, "For you are all sons of Elohim through faith in Yahushua HaMashiach. For as many of you were baptized into Mashiach, have put on Mashiach." Now that we understand what Paul was speaking about, we can see that many of the trending women leadership roles in the church and abroad today cannot be ordained by Elohim. Though we are all one in the Messiah, we are not all on one level. This is why there are 12 thrones for the 12 apostles to judge the tribes of Yahuwah. And the twisting of this truth is why we can definitely notice that the world increasingly reflects the judgment of our Father. More and more men are taking on the image of the one they were not just called to love, but lead. It's important to acknowledge that when Yahushua came, died, and rose, the clock started ticking towards the inevitable final judgment of the earth and those who refuse to follow him. Those who have not been redeemed by the Son of Elohim and do not walk according to the Spirit of Yahuwah are under his wrath. Unfortunately, the world and many church institutions often reject this truth. Because rather than having a society filled with firm and caring godly fathers who lead the male species, silence is often heard in their roles as feminized and truly toxic men rise. Daniel prophesied in chapter 11 verse 37 that the beast shall regard neither the Elohim of his fathers nor desire a woman, nor regard any Elohim, for he shall exalt himself above all of them. The world is unavoidably colliding with the true and living Elohim as humans begin to take on more and more of the image of the man of sin. For men to serve the Antichrist, who are the leaders of society, they won't just need to abandon their divine duties, but literally switch roles with the helpmate. Everything that we see happening in the world today, from Disney to Target, is simply the world preparing the way for the man of sin. What was intended for humanity was designed back in the Garden of Eden. This is why Yahuwah said, "Let us make man in our image and after our likeness." He didn't create man to be twisted along the way. He had a set standard for humanity, man and woman, and of course the children that they produce. But when sin came in through deception, disobedience, there came the fall. And we're witnessing the same ramifications today, just on a greater scale. But it's important for us to not only know the truth, but hold on to the truth. I've talked to many people who say they believe in the Most High God, but also agree that people know who they are and they can change whenever they want to because they are somehow created in his image, but his image wasn't perfect during creation. This is the deception of the enemy. We have to know this and apply the truth because the scripture tells us that there will be a falling away. There will be people who will pursue after their own flesh, their own lust. And there will be preachers, ministers that will come forth and advocate for the lies of the enemy because they are themselves deceived. So knowing the truth is essential in this season. And there's no better way to understand what is truly real for the people of God than going back to the Garden of Eden and journeying through to learn the biblical history of the Father. Not the history that we learn in mainstream Christianity or throughout these movies and TV shows, but what he has shown us in his word. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. I appreciate all you who support this ministry, and I want to encourage you again to stay in the word of the Most High God. It is very vital in this season. I can't express it enough. Hey, if Elohim wills, I'll be able to continue this series next week and share more truths about the history of who the true God is, the creator of both heaven and earth. You guys have yourself a phenomenal day, and remember, always be blessed.
Hamashiach, Hamashiach, by thy side will stand, and it always praise thy name, praise thy name, praise thy name, to heaven, yeah. Lend our hearts and hands to help and increase thy fame. Ooh, your heart, the honor, yeah, of a Mashiach goes forth. Your loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. So cheer for dear Mashiach, lean on to victory. Ooh, all aboard for Hamashiach. All aboard for Hamashiach.